when we have a parenting style that is like our parents see us as an extension of them. They see our needs as serving, our needs supposed to serve our parents. And sometimes, as a child, you don't even have your own voice. You are an extension of them, so you represent them everywhere you go. And your parents believe that they own you, right? So this is why sometimes if you raise your voice, or if you have your own opinions, if you have your own hobbies, if you have the things that you like as a person, they see you as a threat in some way. It's like, why you have your own voice? You are my child. You belong to me. And I remember, growing up hearing children saying, I want to be in a particular profession. I want to be in a particular field. And the parents saying, no, that field is not good enough. Or, we want you to be a doctor, lawyer, teacher. The common things that our parents think is much more successful. And this is because a lot of the times we grew up in environments where our parents just believe that what is best for us is what they want us to do, and not necessarily what is best for us as people. And I have recognized that some parents don't even know who their children are. If you ask the parents, okay, so I am Masudah, as I told you, my name is Masudah, right? So if you ask, let's say, for example, my parents, so who is Masudah? What is some of the things she likes? I am certain that my parents may not give you a full view of who Masudah truly is. Now, I love my parents, but sometimes the attention is not fully on you as a child, and they see you as representing them so deep that you have to basically live under their shadows and what they want you to be, right? So in the Caribbean, we don't always have our own self-identity. Even in school, I had a child come to me crying and say, I don't want to be in a certain profession, but my mother wants me to do this. And if I don't do what my mother say, she may not want me in the house anymore. So you basically have your basic need, right? Maslow's hierarchy of need. And one of the basic need is food, shelter, and clothing. Your shelter, your clothing, your safety, security is at risk because your parents don't want you to live a certain life or to do something outside of what they think you should be doing. And this also comes down to control. This comes down to property. Now, sometimes when we see property, we might think, well, property is seen as a building, right? But in some households, property is seen as, that's my children, that is my children. They belong to me. And if I say that my children not doing X, Y, and Z, they're not doing it. And this is another problem.
You remember my parents say, but I bring it here, I can take it out. You say that, and I hear that so loud. I heard so many people tell children that, and I'm like, can't you really know? Mm-hmm. Now, in no indictment to parents, because they would have done what they have experienced. Mm-hmm. And they may not have liked it. And the interesting thing is, with patterns and in nervous systems, sometimes they become the very thing that they're doing. Because they may have resented their parents for doing that to them. But because the body remembers and does not have another reference point, because this was their normal, they could only do what they know. You could only get out what they put in. So if they didn't put in anything, yes, they noticed that, alright, I didn't like this. But what work did they really do to have another one?
Exactly.
And what was available to them was slim compared to what's available to us, Information is at our fingertips. They didn't really have internet and electricity. It's not too far ago we had flambeau and candle and thing, Mm-hmm. When you really think about the lived experiences they had, we had big back TV, things are all techie. So we could get information, but we give a little bit of grace to them because, we don't want it to be that big. We just actually acknowledging that the transgenerational impact on our society as a whole, if you want to heal, is naming the reality as it is, not necessarily as you think it is. Because everything you said there is so valid, and I'm thinking about, sometimes because your parents can be jealous of you, and I'll tell you why. I will just take a moment to say that again. Your parents can be jealous of you. It's a thing. And you know what they're jealous of? They're not jealous of you, the child. They're jealous of the courage you have that they didn't have, an agency that you put a stand to find yourself in a space that was saying no, and you decided, here what? Come rain, snow, or high water, this is the path that I am following. They did not have the courage or the know-how to do that for themselves. So the insecurity inside of them becomes triggered by you because they were trying to vicariously live through their children. That's on one arm. On the second arm is a lot of people didn't plan children. Children happened upon them. So the reason was about pleasure. It was really selfish reasons why children came into being. So it had no real thought. Then I have some people who love babies. But after the baby stage and the cute stage done and we're going to toddler, we don't like that child.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
So they go on and make another baby. But they have a toddler here and they move away from that toddler and that growing child because they only like babies because babies cute. And people say these things and these are realities that we are faced with as therapists. You see it all the time where this grandmother have these 6 children because the mother don't want them because they pass the baby stage. They pass the night stage.
And that is so true and relevant, what you're saying. Sometimes we are sold a story, a fairy tale of parenting. Oh, parenting is so beautiful, it's a gift from God, it's a blessing. And I'm not saying it is not a gift from God or it's not a blessing, but the true gift is you being a parent to that child. And I hold this wholeheartedly, and my dad always used to say this, birthing a child doesn't make you a parent. And I know some people may not agree because what do you mean? I birthed the child. But nurturing and parenting a child is what makes you a parent. And some parents, and I know that parenting there's no handbooks and it's not easy to do. But some parents, they just kind of copy what their parents did, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. As Shalizahr would have mentioned, some parents don't even know it's unhealthy behavior. And they just, parent their children the same way they saw their parents parenting them. Right? But parenting is such an important job that we don't have enough conversations about the reality of parenting, what it really takes to be an actual parent. Right? What is that? That is some serious work. And sometimes I hear parents saying, being a parent really taught me to heal my inner child. Because as Shalizahr said, you live through your children vicariously. But another thing we have in parenting practices, especially in the Caribbean, is that we don't see our children as people. We see our children as this object that we could control. Sometimes we say, well, this is a child, but this is a person, this is a human being, this is a growing person. And as Shalizahr said, it's not just the baby phase. This child is going to be a toddler, this child is going to be a teenager, this child is going to be an adult. And sometimes parents only see you in the baby stage so much that when you become an adult, they still treat you like a child. They still say things like, you are my child, to disempower you. They still say things like, they still try to control you as an adult. They try to control your life choices. They try to control what you're doing as an adult in your own home. And some children end up in crisis and have to go back to their parents' home. And now they are abused in their parents' home because the parents now treat them like children. You have a curfew and you are literally 35 years old, but you live in your parents' house and you can't go out after 10 because I say you can't go. So the control continues. And you're a big man or woman. So when does it end, right?
When does it end? Listen to me.
Yeah.
The amount of people who don't imagine it. You grew up. You got married. Your marriage doesn't work out anyway. And you have to go home to your family. That traumatized you as a child. Now with this already compounded trauma, for your parents to then turn and say to you, well, you see, I didn't tell you, he or she wasn't good for you. You're beating a dog when it's down, so to speak. You don't beat somebody when they're down. You don't compound the hurt. You're packing salt in the wound because you want to be right, and that too is ego. And I believe ego is losing God out. And it's like, was that necessary? Like, why you felt the need to say that to your flesh and blood, and you know what it belongs to? Their own self-rejection, birth self-hate, not even on a mental space, but in their body. Because they become so resentful that it starts to poison them, that they can't help but poison you. And it's sad, you know? It's absolutely sad because so many people walking around in adult bodies and are really broken children.
Listen, that is so deep what you just said here. A lot of adults, they aren't given a safe place to simply be an adult. Sometimes you self-judge and you self-criticize. Because after you grew up in criticism, you start to now internalize the criticisms that you heard growing up as a child. You're not smart, you're not good enough, you're not pretty. Comparison. You know, they say comparison is the killer of all joys. Sometimes you are compared to an older sibling or another sibling or even the neighbor child, right? And then you grow up with this self-doubt, this inferiority complex where you feel everybody is better than you. And this is where self-esteem comes in. You know, sometimes we make decisions based on our poor self-esteem, and our own family members reinforce the ideology that we are not good enough, right? And this again stores in our body. This makes us feel like, okay, if I am not good enough, then I am going to self-actualize and be somebody who's not good enough. And it all comes down to the internal conversations, yes, but also the external environment that we are placed in, which is sometimes our own home. And I've heard people say, I love of my family members. And for some persons who have a very healthy family environment, they may not really understand the depth of how bad some family homes are, right? Some homes, it's so unhealthy that the children don't feel safe talking to their parents. They don't feel safe in the environment. They don't feel safe even being in the same neighborhood with their family members. And sometimes as a society, we have to leave space for those persons. We can't judge them. We can't think that they're not special or they are defected or they are the problem. You know, I've heard this over and over. If you falling out with all these people, right? As we say, if you are in an argument state or a conflict with all these people, then you are the problem. No. Sometimes you are the one who have the courage in the family to speak up for yourself. And of course, speaking up for yourself in a culture where we have a hierarchy type of parenting, where our parents are the bosses and we are like slaves, speaking up for ourselves might be internalized or seen as a negative type of communication. Why are you speaking up for yourself? I own you, right? It's like, I'm putting it in a bracket here, right? It's like you own something. Let's say, I don't want to compare it to a pet, right? But let's say you own a cat, for example, right? You own a cat, and you in control of that pet. Everything you tell the pet to do, work, so do this, whatever, the pet have to do it, right? But the minute the pet don't do what you want it to do, you start to like feel like as though the pet is a problem. No, people are not pets, right? But I just wanted to show you that sometimes you are in an environment where you have to either conform to the norms and the rules and everything that is there, or be punished first. And some people say, I don't want to be punished, right? And we have seen in instances where a person is trying to be controlled and they break free by any means necessary. Are they seen as a villain because they break free, right? Not everybody who in a prison system is there because they committed a crime. Some people was wrongfully accused, and if they break free from that, are they the ones to be punished because they break free from it? And it's the same thing as a family. Some families are like prison. It have the guards, it have the persons who might be roughing them up, and there's no protection really, and they didn't commit no crime, they just born, right? So you have to put it in that context. When somebody come and say, my family have been very aggressive and unhealthy towards me, you can't judge them because your family not so, and you cannot comprehend somebody's mother hating on them or jealous them. You can't comprehend somebody's father being aggressive towards them, because in your mind, parents are there to protect children. But oftentimes, parents are the perpetrators. Parents are the ones who expose children to vulnerable situations. And now the children have to now self-protect, right? So in our home, in Caribbean homes in particular, because our parents are the ones who control us, if we break out of that control, we are seen as villains, literally, and they are the perpetrators. And some parents are provocative victims. They provoke their children, and when the children defend themselves, the parents play the victim. How could my daughter do that to me? But you didn't think about the type of things you did to your child. And we need to be realistic about the fact that not every parent wants the best for their children. Some parents just want the children to praise them, to do everything that you want your child to do. But some parents don't want to listen to their children. They don't want their children to have an individual voice. You know, some parents really do break their children's self-esteem and self-worth. And we have to acknowledge that in the Caribbean, you know.
We definitely have that. Even as you're speaking, I can see that from a nervous system standpoint, so you see how damaging it is, because before a child is even able to develop self-identity, they are robbed of the opportunity to be business of the brain. So they are regimented into this identity that's not even solidified because it's moving. The target forever moving for a parents who don't know their identity. So they happen upon this thing, they happen upon this child, and they have no plan for the direction of this child life. Because more than likely, it wasn't a prayerful foundation, it wasn't something that was planned, and they just now trying to fit this child into the already chaotic life that they probably had, because most situations are like that. And yes, at some point they may be able to come, but there comes a certain self-responsibility, because parenting is a responsibility. And as you rightly said, everybody is not a parent or nurturer. Some people just produce it. Yeah, you know, they're producing and manufacturing children without the emotional intelligence or wherewithal, because when you look at nature and animal kingdom and how they honor and rear babies and they cuddle them and they make sure they're safe, for the most intelligent race, humankind, I don't know where we miss it, because we literally reject children. We have things where people have real issues with postpartum, but they're physically rejecting this child because their nervous system is so traumatized, bringing the child unconsciously to them because they probably were traumatized from the womb. And now this postpartum is coming up and they're fighting for the life to come out of this depression and this anxiety from making this baby. And they don't have agency because they work that's supposed to come. And it shouldn't be that we have to heal from our childhood, but the reality is the work that has to come to be able to help this new life, you know, be watered and nourished to become a functional citizen in society. You know, I'm listening to you share and I can't do so much of what you're saying, and I'm like, how much of our society actually functional and have a regulated movement? From a transgenerational standpoint, the truth is very slim, few to none. It's only the persons who actively choose to say, listen, this ends with me. The people, because you know, you see gentle parenting now, people attempting new ways. Like I have a friend who is gentle parenting, but I am somebody who values discipline. So in her trial and error stages, I said to her, listen to me, I know you're doing this gentle and you don't have another way, but gentle don't mean lack of discipline. Because people don't know without the abuse, how then do you apply discipline? You don't have to beat a child to discipline a child. You can shift your tone in that child, in that voice, and that child is going to comply just by the tone of your voice and know, yes, this or not do this. You have to know how to be serious. So if you can't identify emotions for yourself, because you were not given the ability to emote in your own childhood, because as you're looking to weep, it's like, as you laugh, I remember growing up, you would be playing on a Sunday and they'd be like, you don't have anything for you to do? You don't go pick up a book.
Yeah.
So you can't play. You only had to read books. and do chores. Like you can't do nothing else because why? Why it must be like that? But then I also, because being adopted, I grew up as an only child in that environment, a different environment where that wasn't the case. They applaud play. So imagine being trained to play and being in an environment where you're not allowed to play. So you're kind of confused now because you don't know what to really do. Should I do what I'm accustomed to, or should I conform to this space? Is this a safe space to be? And then how do we identify safety even right now as we listen here? Like, are you safe where you are? Are you safe in your family? I have said to many clients after my own work that your family is your training ground, because there's a difference between relative and family at this point in your life, because a lot of us have been punished for having to step away from families that were abusive and toxic and torturous and all the things. And a lot of people don't have reference points when they have a close-knit family. But there are families that isolate oftentimes one member and they bully that one member, whether it be for resources, because they find the person more educated than them and they get a better job. So their salary is the community salary. Not just the immediate relatives, the extended family. So the system makes poor children, but your salary minus the poor children. Plus you, plus and plus and plus. Because these are realities that people are facing and they would have been working, and then they feel pressured because they see in a certain degree of poverty.
Wow, that is so deep. We really have to start processing. And I use the word processing because it's a lot to take in when you recognize how much your parents have caused you to experience trauma in any type of way. And some of us never recognize or even link our trauma to what we experience as children. We think it's what we're going through as adults. But if we were to really think about the type of parents we had, it goes back even deeper into our attachment style and how our parents shape our attachment styles. You know, sometimes you hear a person say, I have an insecure attachment style, or a disorganized attachment style. And it links back to, again, safety, security, our needs, and the type of families that we came from. Sometimes as an adult, you have to reparent yourself. You have to now step into this zone where you, number one, acknowledge that your parents were in fact unhealthy, right? And then how do you now process that? Because sometimes we tend to brush it off. Nah, that's mommy. You know, we have this kind of concept. Yeah.
That's just how they are.
It's just how
that's just how they are concept at all, because that is the get out of jail free card that we give to people to reward their bad behavior. And the truth is, yes, that is how they are in this moment, but there's a degree of accountability that needs to be taken. And there's no indictment on them because, as we said before, they were moving from the patterns that they were presented with there. So it's not that we're beating them on the back for being who they are, because it may not be that they had any other tools to utilize. But if you don't choose to reparent yourself, you can marry your parents.
Yeah.
And marrying your parents is a whole next kind of ball game, because you don't always notice when you marry your parent, because as we're talking about attachment styles, what happens when that's all you know, because all your parents was your first blueprint of what relationship should look like. And what happens when an avoidance pattern meets an anxious pattern?
And that is quite common in relationships, because now what you experience in your family will impact your relationships, of course. But oftentimes, someone who has an avoidant attachment style, they tend to kind of latch on to persons who might be anxious, right? Because they are used to not being so close, and an anxious person needs some validation, right? They need you to validate them in the relationship. And someone who has the not disorganized, the avoidant attachment style, they avoid intimacy at all costs. They avoid closeness. They avoid love, not love in its total sense, but they avoid intimacy that is very close because they did not have that intimacy growing up. And a lot of us had parents who never told us they love us or hug us or give us any type of intimacy. Intimacy is not just sex. Intimacy is showing physical love, hugs, a little kiss on the cheeks, right? And showing that, yes, I love this person. And some people never had that growing up. Love was always like a military experience. Mommy come in, stand up at attention, go and make up your bed, right? We always had this kind of stand up at attention type of intimacy with our parents. So now that we bring that in our intimate relationship. And some people, they are very anxious, right? Or person. Now, you could be someone who is not anxious and you are secure. But if you go with a person who is avoidant, you could kind of have symptoms of a person who have anxious attachment style. Because when you are in a relationship and the person pulls back, and they pull back communication, intimacy, they pull back their presence, right? So you may not hear from this person, you may not, even if you're living with them, they tend to be distant. And you do feel the disconnect, right? And sometimes when you try to communicate the disconnect, you might be seen as a needy partner. So they may label you as, why are you so needy? Why you always want to be up under me? I'm giving you all that I can give you, but it's never enough. And it's never enough because as an avoidance, just their presence is enough, right? And now this will spill us into another topic that I've been hearing a lot of, and I talk a lot on it, right? Narcissism. Sometimes we may label our partners as a narcissist or someone who has antisocial personality disorder because they tend to not be intimate and they tend to look or appear as though they are emotionally unavailable. And some partners could be emotionally unavailable because their parents are emotionally unavailable, so they never learn emotional availability, or emotional availability was highly frowned upon. Like a boy child crying, right? And the parents is like, are you a girl? Why are you crying, right? So they punish emotional regulation. They punish emotional awareness, right? So then you learn to cover your emotional awareness and be a man and be a soldier. Well, what it is to be a soldier is to be disconnected. So in their experiences, they grow up disconnected. So when you have an intimate partner, your disconnection is your norm. You are accustomed being disconnected. And so sometimes we have to relearn how to reconnect. Because some of us, we label the disconnect as introvert, but it's not that we're introverted. We are disconnected way more than an introverted person because we lack the capacity for emotional availability in every area of our life, not just intimate relationships, but even in our workplaces and our friendships. Some of us can't hold on to friends because in order to have a friend, you got to be a friend, and you have to be regulated. You have to be emotionally sensitive because people have feelings, and if you cannot attach yourself to that and understand that and be selfless, then it's very difficult for you to have relationships on the whole.
But on that side, from a nervous system standpoint, when there's a rupture in your child, that relational sense just doesn't get to develop. So it's not that they may not want to be a friend, they don't know how.
Yeah.
And are we patient and kind enough to hold space for each other to correct it, to teach somebody how to hold you? Do you know how you even want to be held?
That is true. And another thing is that sometimes we hold space for people who betray us. So we hold space for them, but then they traumatize us. So because we have something called betrayal trauma. And even as a friend, your friend could betray you because your friend don't have emotional awareness or even emotional availability. So your friend might be doing you something and your friend hurt you, but your friend not acknowledging that they hurt you because they are not emotionally available to even recognize that what they're doing is wrong. And this is what we say they lack empathy, right? So yes, you might want to hold space for somebody, but if they lack empathy, then they are not holding space for you. So you are the only one holding space.
And then there are those who become so self-absorbed because in friend groups and relational patterns, you might encounter somebody who, have you encountered, I should ask, a person who they pick their friends who just lower than their class bracket. or just lower than their social circles, their regular social circles, so they could be the superior ones. They could do good, but never better than them, as a coping mechanism to make up for the insecurities of their childhood.
Yeah, it is deep. And one thing I want us to recognize, even as we have in this conversation, and this is a conversation that we need to normalize, right? The relational traumas that we experience, because intergenerational trauma, transactional trauma, transgenerational trauma, right, is relational trauma.
Well, it's really transactional, right? No, you might be wrong on that.
Yes.
It transfers from one person to another. When you really think about it, they might be onto something with that.
Exactly, right? So, we need to be aware of it. We need to know that it exists and stop thinking that we're overthinking. You see the word overthinking? That leads to us, our deep thinking part of our brain, that leads us to think that what we're thinking is not real. And it's not that you're overthinking, it's that you are over-processing. You are processing what you are experiencing. And sometimes we see that as negative, but it is positive because we have to process, right? We have to make sense of our experiences in order for us to realize that we need to shift gears, that we might need to come out of a cultural ditch, and we might need to reparent ourselves, right? Or we may need to bring different norms to us, right? And think a little more openly. Yeah, so that is exactly what we need in the Caribbean in order for us to be a lot more self-aware. Right, so this conversation I know was a lot. You have a lot to take in, but we need to continue these types of conversations. And on Therapy Talks, this is why a therapy safe space is so important, so that there's no judgment, there's no self-criticisms, there's no internal negative conversation. It's just free-flowing. And of course, with Miss Shalizahr, who speaks about the soul and the body, we understand that it's not just about how we see things, but it's also about how our body internalizes and stores our experiences, and how our souls are impacted by our childhood traumas, our communities, our environments, and how we're able to use all these moving parts to really piece them together and to become more, for us to become more wholesome and more present in our lives.
Yes, so on that note, I'll just like for us to just integrate a little bit and bring some presence and life back to our being, so you can have somebody close in real time. Just where you are, I would love for you to just take a moment to feel your feet on the ground. If you're laying on your bed, just with the support of your mattress or your blanket, and just notice your breath. Don't force it, don't exaggerate it. Just notice that you have a breath right here. And as you notice that, I just want for you to acknowledge that you are safe with you right here and right now.
So thank you so much, Miss Belgrove. She's a powerhouse, guys. I told you she's a powerhouse. And as we continue to have conversations surrounding holistic health, right? Mental health, but it's also holistic health. We will bring on conversations that really ignite some type of thinking, right? Because we have to start thinking in a way that will really ignite change. And change starts with us moving. It doesn't start with us just thinking, but it starts with mobilization, with us moving into a changing direction, where we recognize that where we're at right now may not necessarily be where we should be. And in terms of healing, we need to encourage persons to just be authentic and to not only follow what the social norm says to follow, but to just be their authentic self, and to really acknowledge that they have been in situations or environments that truly traumatize them. And so on this note, I want to take this opportunity to thank all the viewers who participated in Therapy Talks, the podcast, and stay tuned for more enlightening conversations, and conversations that could be very deep, but can also shed some light on some social issues that we have throughout the Caribbean.